You know, usually when we sit down to eat a meal in our own homes, it's just, well, it's a purely functional event.
Right, yeah. You're just trying to get fed.
Exactly. I mean, you open your fridge, you grab what you need, put it on a plate, and you sit down. There's no audience, there's no negotiation.
No, not at all.
But the second you step through the doors of a restaurant, and especially in a place where you might not speak the native language perfectly, suddenly you're performing on a stage, it becomes this like highly choreographed social dance.
It really is a dance. And, one slightly off-key phrase can just completely change the rhythm of the entire experience for you.
Oh, for sure.
Because you aren't just communicating a desire for calories, right? You are actively navigating social hierarchies, cultural expectations, and, well, professional boundaries.
And dining out is this completely universal human experience. But communicating your needs effectively to the person serving you without accidentally, stepping on any toes is a true art form.
It takes practice.
It does. So today we're taking a deep dive into this really comprehensive guide from Phrasy. It's their breakdown of restaurant English, specifically focusing on 10 essential phrases you need to navigate a meal from the moment you sit down to the very moment you leave.
And just to be clear for you listening, this isn't just a vocabulary lesson. We aren't here to just memorize flashcards today.
Right. Nobody wants to do that.
Exactly. What makes this source material so compelling is how it reveals the underlying mechanics of polite society.
Yeah. So our mission today is to really decode the psychology, the cultural nuances, and those unspoken rules of ordering food. Because it is incredibly empowering to walk into a new environment and just know exactly how to ask for what you need.
It gives you so much confidence.
It really does. Okay,
Yeah.
let's unpack this right from the very beginning. So you walk in, you sit down at the table, and sometimes nothing happens.
Breaks.
Right. Nobody brings the menu. So the source material highlights that the phrase you need here is simply, the menu, please. It's short, it's polite.
It's effective.
But they point out that what you absolutely shouldn't say is, give me the menu.
Oh, yeah. Big red flag there.
Right. Now, logically, give me the menu states exactly what you want. But socially, it's kind of like using a verbal bulldozer. It just wrecks the atmosphere. Why does the English language rely so heavily on softening these requests instead of just using direct, efficient commands?
Well, what's fascinating here is the concept of autonomy and really how it shifts across different cultures.
Okay, how so?
So, in many English-speaking cultures, a direct command like give me is perceived as a direct attack on the other person's agency.
Oh, wow. An attack.
Yeah, when you say give me, you're essentially treating the waiter as a vending machine. You push a button and the product dispenses.
Right.
But by saying the menu, please, you're acknowledging their human role in the exchange. You're initiating a collaboration rather than issuing, like, a subpoena.
I have actually fallen into that verbal bulldozer trap myself when traveling.
Oh, I think we all have at some point.
You directly translate a phrase from your native language in your head, and because you're nervous, you just blurt out the absolute most efficient version of the sentence. You don't mean to sound demanding, but the literal translation just strips away all that cultural padding.
Precisely. And that cultural padding is, well, it's the invisible architecture of politeness.
That's a great way to put it.
And the guide actually adds a really great practical tip here for when you do finally get the menu.
Yeah.
If you're handed something you just can't read, you can soften the interaction even further by asking, do you have an English menu?
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, because many places do keep them behind the counter, but they won't automatically offer them unless you prompt them in a way that, doesn't make anyone feel awkward or presumptuous.
That sets the tone perfectly. You're establishing a relationship right off the bat. And speaking of establishing norms, right after the menu comes the great water debate.
Ah, yes, the water situation.
The guide points out a major cultural difference here. In Europe and Asia, water isn't always the default freebie that it is in the U.S.
Right, you can't just expect it.
Exactly. You can't just assume a giant glass of ice water is going to magically appear the second you sit down.
Yeah.
You have to specifically ask, using the phrase, could you bring water?
Which is a brilliant phrase, really, because it utilizes a structure that is essentially a universal skeleton key for service interactions.
Yeah.
Could you bring?
I really like that framing a skeleton key.
It works for almost anything.
It completely changes the power dynamic from a demand to a question of their capability.
Yes, and have you ever thought about why asking about someone's capability feels so much more polite than just telling them what to do?
I suppose it gives them an out. Like it feels less like an order and more like a gentle inquiry.
Exactly that. It establishes immediate mutual respect.
Mm-hmm.
It's asking about their capacity to assist you. Now, obviously, a restaurant can bring you water,
Right, they have water.
but by framing it as a question of their ability, could you,
Yeah.
you maintain their autonomy in the interaction.
And you have to know how to use that key because you often have to specify what kind of water you actually want.
Oh, definitely.
The guide notes that you'll typically need to choose between tap water, which is usually free, sparkling water with bubbles, or still water with no bubbles.
And the expectations around those vary wildly depending on what continent you're standing on.
Oh, for sure. But the core grammatical pattern never changes, right? Could you bring tap water? Or could you bring sparkling water?
Right? It acts as a very reliable template. By mastering that single grammatical structure, you've unlocked a way to politely request absolutely anything a restaurant might offer.
Like extra napkins or something.
Exactly. Or a dessert menu. You just plug your variable into the equation. It sets a tone of courteous collaboration from minute one.
Mhm.
And honestly, it takes a huge amount of pressure off you as the diner.
But securing the menu and navigating the whole water situation is really just the opening move.
Just setting the stage.
Exactly. Once that menu is actually in your hands, the real challenge begins. You have to make a choice, and then you have to communicate that choice across the table.
Right. You have to sort of bridge the gap between what you're reading and what the kitchen is ultimately going to prepare for you.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. The guide suggests leaning heavily on the waiter's expertise when you feel overwhelmed or, you simply don't know what to order.
Which happens a lot.
All the time. They suggest using phrases like, what do you recommend? What's popular here? Or what's the special today? And this completely reframes the waiter's role.
It really does.
They aren't just a server fetching plates anymore. They become this knowledgeable local guide. You're basically enlisting them as your culinary Sherpa.
That is a crucial psychological shift. If we connect this to the bigger picture, you're transitioning the interaction from a purely transactional exchange into a collaborative one.
I love that.
Think about the cognitive load of staring at a 10-page menu in an unfamiliar place. I mean, it's exhausting.
Oh, it's totally overwhelming.
But when you ask, what do you recommend? You are signaling that you trust their judgment. That relieves your own decision fatigue while simultaneously elevating their status.
It's a total win-win. I mean, they get to share their expertise and you get to just relax.
And people in the service industry generally respond incredibly well to being treated as experts in their domain because, frankly, they are.
Right.
They know the rhythm of that kitchen and the nuances of that specific menu way better than anyone walking to the front door.
So your guide gives you a recommendation, you make your decision, and now you have to officially commit.
The point of no return.
Right. You signal this shift by saying, I'd like to order, but the language of actually selecting your food is where the guide puts up this massive flashing red warning sign.
Oh, the warning. This is so important.
They list the safe, polite phrases first, like, I'd like the chicken, I'll have the pasta, or if you're just copying your dining companion, the same for me.
All very safe.
But the warning is to never, ever use the phrase, I want. Like, never say, I want the chicken.
It's a very common trap, especially for non-native speakers, or honestly, even native speakers who are just feeling a bit rushed or distracted.
It goes right back to that verbal bulldozer we talked about earlier. It just feels so abrasive.
It does. I want sounds incredibly demanding to the native English ear because it centers entirely on your desire and leaves zero room for the social grace of the transaction.
Right. It's just an unyielding statement of fact.
Exactly. But when you shift to I'd like, you are employing the conditional tense. I would like.
And the conditional tense just changes the temperature of the whole room.
It creates a hypothetical space. I would like this if it pleases you to provide it.
Right.
Even though everyone at the table, including the waiter, knows you are absolutely expecting to get the chicken, the linguistic framing maintains that positive, respectful relationship. It kind of preserves the illusion that they are doing you a favor rather than fulfilling a mandatory contract.
Right. We're pretending it's this gentle hypothetical just to keep the social gears turning smoothly. But let's be honest. Simply pointing at the menu and declaring your choice is rarely the end of the story. Often what is printed on the page isn't exactly what you need.
Almost never.
Which means you have to negotiate the specifics without ruining all that wonderful rapport you just spent the last 10 minutes building.
And this is where the stakes elevate significantly. We're moving from casual preferences to the realm of physical safety and dietary boundaries.
Yeah, let's start with a classic restaurant hurdle, steak temperatures.
Good one.
The source material maps out the standard answers when the waiter asks how you'd like your steak cooked. You've got rare, which is pink inside and almost raw, medium, a little pink, and well done, which is fully cooked with no pink.
Right.
The guide points out that if you are completely frozen and just don't know what to say, medium is considered the safe default answer.
It's essentially the statistical average of diner preference.
Yeah,
And usually, it's how the chef conceptualizes the dish's optimal texture anyway.
makes sense.
So if you don't have a strong preference, it's a really solid fallback that just won't raise any eyebrows back in the kitchen.
But then we get into the high stakes territory, which requires a lot more proactive communication, and that's allergies.
Oh, yeah, crucial.
The guide establishes a golden rule here. Tell the waiter before you order. Better safe than sick, as the source puts it.
Timing is absolutely everything with that kind of communication. Waiting until the food actually arrives to mention a nut allergy doesn't just create an awkward situation. It disrupts the entire flow of the restaurant's operations.
Yeah, the phrasing they suggest is pretty straightforward. You just say, I'm allergic to nuts or peanuts or seafood or dairy like milk, cheese, butter.
Right, clear and direct.
They also clarify the distinction between dietary preferences. They note that stating, I'm a vegan, which means no milk, eggs, or honey, sets a much stricter culinary boundary than saying, I'm a vegetarian.
Definitely a big difference there.
And if you aren't sure about a dish, you ask, does this have nuts? Or does this have gluten? Or you can ask for vegan options or vegetarian dishes.
And notice the structure returning to an inquiry there.
Oh.
Do you have? Instead of demanding, they manifest a vegan dish out of thin air.
Right. Now, I do want to push back a little on behalf of the listener here.
Okay, go for it.
When it comes to allergies, obviously you have to speak up. I mean, it's a matter of health.
Of course.
But what about when someone is just, being particular? Is it really socially acceptable to ask for so many modifications? Doesn't asking, could I have it without onions or can you put the sauce on the side, inherently annoy the kitchen staff? I mean, they designed the dish a certain way for a reason.
This raises an important question about self-advocacy in dining.
Okay.
We often feel like an imposition when we ask for what we want. But restaurants are ultimately in the hospitality business. The key difference between being perceived as a difficult customer and a self-advocating diner is entirely in the framing.
So it's not the request itself, it's the packaging.
Exactly. When you use the structure the guide provides, could I have it without onions?
What?
Could I have it with the sauce on the side? Or even no salt? You are transforming a potentially annoying demand into a polite request.
Right.
You aren't commanding them to take the onions off. You are asking if the modification is possible within their workflow. That linguistic respect goes a very long way in keeping the kitchen happy while still getting you a meal you actually want to eat.
So the magic word could saves the day again. By asking, you're validating their authority over the food.
Precisely.
Now, there's one more trap in this negotiation phase, and the guide calls it out perfectly. The spice trap.
Oh, this is a big one.
They warn that in Asian, Mexican, or Indian restaurants, you have to be very, very careful because their definition of medium might be your definition of very hot.
Yes, absolutely.
The strategy they recommend is to say, not too spicy, please, or could you make it mild? And they make a highly practical point here when you don't know, go mild, because you can always add hot sauce later.
The spice trap is such a perfect example of cultural relativity in language.
How so?
Well, it highlights how the definition of a single word, like medium, is entirely subjective. It completely changes based on the cultural context of the kitchen you are currently sitting in.
It's all relative. I mean, medium isn't a scientific measurement.
Right. It's not a unit on the Scoville scale. It's a cultural agreement. Medium in a Midwestern American diner means something radically different than medium in an authentic Thai restaurant in Bangkok.
Oh, for sure.
Language isn't just about translating vocabulary, it's about translating cultural baselines.
That is such an important distinction. We use our own language to anchor us to our personal baseline, but we completely forget that the listener's baseline might be miles away from ours.
Which is exactly why asking, could you make it mild, is so effective. You are strategically resetting the baseline to the safest common denominator.
That's really smart.
Now, if you happen to be someone who just loves heat, the guide does give you the phrase, extra spicy, please. But You are taking your fate into your own hands at that point. You are asking them to completely remove the cultural guardrails.
You are quite literally playing with fire.
You really are.
Okay, so you've navigated your personal preferences, you've clearly communicated any dietary boundaries, you've successfully translated the spice levels across cultural lines, and your food finally arrives.
Success.
You get to sit back, relax, and actually enjoy this customized meal you just orchestrated.
Which is the reward for mastering the nuances of the dance.
But, eventually the plates are empty, the meal is over, and there is one final crucial interaction required before you can walk out the door. Settling up the bill and really synthesizing this whole experience.
The formal closure of the social contract.
Exactly. When you're ready to pair, the phrase depends slightly on geography. In the US, you generally say, "the check, please." But the guide notes that in the UK, they say, "the bill, please."
Both are perfectly fine and understood universally, though.
Right. But the guide also mentions a nonverbal option here that is incredibly common. It says you can use a hand sign, acting like you are writing in the air. The waiter will see it from across the room and understand immediately.
It's a highly efficient piece of communication.
So what does this all mean? To me, it points out the elegance of this specific gesture. It's this brilliant piece of universal silent language. You don't have to shout over a crowded room. You just mime signing a piece of paper, and the message is received instantly.
And it's fascinating because it's a gesture born out of a very specific physical action, signing a credit card receipt or, writing out a paper check.
Right.
Even as payment methods become increasingly digital, where we are just tapping phones or scanning watches, that analog gesture of air writing remains the universally recognized symbol for, I am ready to conclude this transaction.
It's like a behavioral fossil. It survived the digital transition just because it works so well. And once that transaction is concluded, the guide offers two final essential phrases for good manners.
Always need good manners.
Always. If you're paying with cash and want to leave the remainder as a tip, you just say, "keep the change." And of course, the absolute most important phrase of any interaction. Thank you. Let's actually quickly review the whole flow with a mini dialogue the source provided.
That's a great idea.
You start by confirming a table for two, then you order tap water. Next, you ask for salmon recommendations, maybe check for a nut allergy just to be safe. You request it with no onions, and then finally you pay and say, "keep the change."
If we look at this entire sequence from a bird's eye view, these 10 phrases don't just exist in isolation. They form a complete psychological loop.
How so?
Well, think about the progression. You initiate the social contract with "the menu, please," which establishes immediate respect.
Right.
Then you transition into a collaborative phase by deferring to their expertise with "what do you recommend?"
Ah, I see.
You then navigate the complexities of your own needs using conditional, polite framing. I would like, could I have it without? And finally, you cleanly request the dissolution of that contract with "the check, please," sealing the entire interaction with gratitude.
So when you string those requests together, you aren't just reciting lines from a phrase book, you are basically building an armor of politeness.
Exactly.
You're creating a smooth, frictionless environment for both you and the staff. You've navigated an entire dining experience flawlessly.
It truly highlights that fluency in any situation isn't about knowing every single word in the dictionary.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the right structural framing for the environment you are in.
That's such a good point.
It's about knowing how to construct a request so that the person on the receiving end feels valued and respected.
And for anyone listening who wants to really lock this framing in, the source provides some great practical tools. You can actually test yourself on these phrases and their structures over at phrasy.xyz, or you can grab a PDF of 60 travel phrases at phrasy.gumroad.com/L Phrasy. It's a fantastic way to deliberately build that linguistic toolkit.
Because that is exactly what this is, a toolkit for navigating the world.
Yeah.
It's not just about knowing the English words for water or menu. It's about mastering the polite framing, the could you, the I would like, that is needed to get exactly what you want while respecting the cultural context of the restaurant environment.
Well, you are perfectly equipped for any dining scenario now. You can navigate the menu, recruit the waiter as your knowledgeable guide, customize your meal to your exact specifications without annoying the chef, and exit gracefully.
You're ready to go.
But before we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder the next time you sit down to order a meal. We've talked extensively about how dining out is a choreographed dance of politeness and boundaries.
Right.
But what if the way we choose to order our food, how we handle those little requests, how we negotiate the modifications, and how we manage the inherent vulnerability of relying on a complete stranger to feed us, what if that reveals more about our core worldview than the actual food we choose to eat? Something to chew on the next time you ask for the menu, please.